This recording will walk you through the unit work sample that we use here at Charleston Southern University. On the left, you will see a PowerPoint that will hit the highlights, and on the right, you will see the actual document that you will type into and use for creating your unit work sample. You can find the unit work sample document on Blackboard. As always, if you have any specific questions about your unit work sample or other key assessments, please talk to your methods instructor and they will help you out with those. The unit work sample is made up of 5 different sections. Section 1 goes over the major units and goals. Section 2 is all about your instructional unit plan. That's the meat of your unit work sample. Section 3 talks about the assessments. Sections 4 and 5 you'll actually complete during your clinical practice semester. So you'll start your unit work sample this semester and you'll actually finish it next spring. Section 4 is about analysis of student learning, and Section 5 is reflection and self-evaluation. So Section 1 is your major unit goals and objectives. You want to describe the major goals and objectives for this specific unit. You want to write them in the form of the student will be able to format, and you want to make sure they're aligned to your South Carolina standards. So as you can see over on the document, Section 1, you're going to want to have probably 5 to 10 objectives, and you're going to use a chart format so the student will be able to, and then list out the actual objective or goal for these students, and then give a direct correlation to the standards that goal aligns to. At the end of that section, be sure to do your reflection on this part of the unit work sample. All sections must have a reflection attached to them. This is where we get to see what you are thinking. Section 2 of the unit work sample is the actual instructional unit plan. You are going to use at least 10 lessons or 10 days. And basically, you're writing out the lesson plan for those 10 lessons or 10 days within the unit. So you want to make sure you fill out the chart for each part. And in each day or lesson, you're going to have your objective. That will come from Section 1. Then you're going to list out the content to be covered. You will then describe the strategies that you're going to be using. This is where ideally you actually just kind of map out really briefly what your lesson plan is. How are you going to introduce the material? How are you presenting the material? How are you reviewing it? How are you assessing it? Then the next, for each day, you'll give the list of the assessments that will be used that day, whether they're formal or informal assessments, what technology you're using, and then finally list the materials and resources needed for that day in the unit. And you will do this for at least 10 lessons or 10 days. Notice early childhood and elementary, you must have all the different content areas and you must do read alouds. That's for early childhood and elementary students. So you will complete a lesson plan for 10 days. We provided an extra slot. If you need more than that, go ahead and copy and paste it. And then at the end of that, you will reflect on your instructional plan. How does this balance the academic standards and expectations with your needs, abilities, and development of your individual students? What was your thought process in creating this instructional plan? Section 3 is all about your assessments. So once again, we love charts. What I want you to do is to create a chart that for 5 of your objectives, so a minimum of 5 objectives or lessons, I want you to have both a pre-assessment and a post-assessment in order to measure student success of that objective. So on the chart, you're going to want to type in what is the actual objective you're dealing with, what is the pre-assessment or assessments, and then also what's the post-assessment or assessments. You want to tell me, is this summative or is it formative? How are you going to actually assess it? And then finally, what are the actual accommodations for students with special needs, with learning disabilities, for your exceptional students? So any accommodations that you want to do. Please be sure to take note that you need to have a copy of each of the assessments at the end of this template. So if you're going to give a bell ringer, you want to have an actual copy of what that activity is going to be embedded at the end of this document. So you want to list out for at least 5 objectives, the pre-assessment and the post-assessment. What is your plan? And then for section 3, you want to reflect. How do these pre and post assessments align with your learning goals? And what is your formative assessment plan? How is that going to make sure that you're moving through the unit in a logical order? So once again, sections 1, 2, and 3 can be done in your methods class. Sections 4 and 5 will be completed during your clinical practice. So section 4 is where you go in and actually analyze your student learning. So when you're doing your clinical practice, you're going to want to create a chart that shows all of your pre and post assessments that you had listed out in the previous section, and you want to show patterns of student performance. So you can do this on a chart, on a graph, but somehow represent the pre-assessment and post-assessment data. You're going to be creating tables, charts, or graphs that depict this information. So you're going to be looking for patterns of student success or student growth on the assessments. That's section 4. Section 5 is all about reflection and self-evaluation. So now that you have all this data that you've collected in section 4, section 5 is where you're going to write a narrative summary talking about what are the results and implications of this student learning data. So did the students get it? Do they understand? Did you meet your objectives? We give you some hints over here of what you need to focus on. So make sure you focus on where students were successful and then also where they weren't successful. Sometimes we learn from things that didn't go so well better than the things that went well. And then finally, for this section, you do want to reflect on the possibilities of professional development. So what does this mean for you in the future? Identify at least 2 specific steps that you're going to take to improve your performance in these areas that you identified through data analysis. Once again, we're using a 4-level rubric here. So your goal is proficient, level 3. So read through the rubric and see what we're looking for level 3 proficient for the unit work sample. Make sure when you submit this on Blackboard and LiveText that you have samples of each assessment, both the pre and the post. And next semester, after you've actually implemented this, you're going to actually include samples of the student work. You'll be able to scan these into one document and upload that document into LiveText for your professor to evaluate. So that is the unit work sample. If you have any questions or concerns, please talk to your advisor.